Busch Gardens.
Oh!
Something we've tiptoed around with a very drunk tip. We're sober tipping it.
This is a badge or whatever they're called, an AA coin.
Yeah, we're going to have to turn in our AA badge now and our AAA badge. In the same historic tradition of such events as Altamont, Busch Gardens' mission of combining beer and amusement park rides operated under the same credo of what could go wrong. On the flip side of our imported German brewers from the alcohol episode like Meyer and Zobelin, who started their brewing careers locally, another German named Adolphus Busch. He got his start in brewing up ice-cold alcoholism in a different city than Los Angeles. He was born 1839 in Kastel, Germany. He was the youngest of 22 siblings.
Oh my God, that's a joke.
I'm not joking. That's why he had to make the beer to supply to all of his sad siblings. So Lil Adolf, he moved to St. Louis, Missouri at the age of 18. He opened up a brewery supply business there, and in 1861, he married the daughter of a brewery operator named Eberhard Anheuser.
All of this is made up.
Germany's made up. They decided to merge not only their naughty bits together, but also their family companies to become Anheuser-Busch. How do you pronounce that?
Anheuser-Busch.
Is it Anheuser or Anheuser?
I've always heard, like in commercials, Anheuser.
Anheuser. What's up?
No, it's Anheuser.
What's up?
What?
I repeat.
What's happening?
What's happening, bud? What's happening? What's happening?
Yeah, save it for the intro next month.
Save it for the Spinal Tap Budweiser commercial mashup intro that's coming.
It's a mighty wind.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's the same movie. They're all the same. It's all bands with Fred Willard, who was also in Salem's Lot, which I watched.
Directed by Tobe Hooper, just died. They're all coming together.
Who I also just watched. I watched his death. It was by my own blade. In 1878, Anheuser-Busch started brewing a beer named after a town from their beloved Bohemia, Bohemian Rhapsody, which
oh my God,
I listened to. So this Jessica Biel. This beer was called Budweiser, but what really set their company apart was that Busch would pasteurize the beer, which meant that they would keep longer and could now be shipped across the country, but their friends had taken their keys away from them, so they had to sober up for a few hours before they could get shipped across the country. This is how Adolphus Busch became a millionaire, and like all millionaires at the time, he had to own a house in the new winter getaway for America's elite, Pasadena, California. Not just anywhere in Pasadena, on South Orange Grove Boulevard.
Oof. South Pass.
Which was, is that, what are you saying?
I don't know what the cross street is, but I just know that it runs through South Pasadena and I get chills.
It's across the street of $1 million and a checking account. How about that? You'll never be there. It's the cross street of you won't and live here.
That hurt on so many levels.
This area of South Orange Grove Boulevard, it was known at the time as Millionaire's Row. Also living on that street were the Wrigleys and the Gambles of Procter & Gamble, and more importantly, Doc Brown's house from Back to the Future. That's the Gamble.
The fictional doctor?
More important than all those medicines they made, fake doctor lived there. The house Busch bought was previously owned by John Cravens, who was the founder of SoCal Edison.
Oh, wow.
Wes Craven also died. Busch called this house Ivy Hall because it had ivy growing over it and because it had a hall.
Not creative at all, but then he just mashed their names together for the beer, so I'm not expecting a lot.
Come on. Hey,
come on. It's America's beer.
He's not a few. It's America's German beer. At first, he bought just the mansion in a nearby 4-acre ravine in May 1904, but soon he expanded his property by buying 11 more acres that he called the Annex. Eventually, their property spread over 38 acres, located around the area of here's your intersections for you: Madeline Drive, South Arroyo Boulevard, and South Orange Grove Boulevard.
Okay, I don't know any of those.
Never been there. I've never been to Pasadena.
Pasadena.
Most of this land, Busch and his wife Lily got to live out their fantasy of turning it into a huge, expansive, and expensive garden of different types of plant life and designs, a lot like what Huntington did with the Huntington Gardens. They added 14 miles of walkways around the gardens and brought in 100,000 plants to help decorate it.
How many miles?
14.
And that's the property?
I mean, it's not like a straight line of 14. It's like 14 miles of walkways.
I see. Okay.
So it's probably just a zigzag.
Yeah.
A really closely cropped zigzag.
It's like any given Disneyland ride line.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's all it was. The line for Disneyland started here. Population was booming back then. One of the plants they had was a clipping from one of the weeping willows that surrounded Napoleon's grave in St. Helena. That's pretty cool.
That's a folk tale, right?
Yeah, it was smaller than all the other weeping willows, but it thought it was more powerful.
And it grew more aggressively.
And it caused a lot of strife, but people still respect him.
Because the trees are wearing a funny hat or whatever. I don't know.
They also had decorations like an old working mill powered by a stream, and to make their grandchildren happy, statues of characters and scenes from different Hans Christian Andersen stories. This is before, obviously way before Disney. They still had Snow White before she was corporatized.
Cool. Yeah, before they made her hot.
Yeah. Before she was so sexy like she was in 1938. Ooh, mommy.
Sign me up, daddy.
I wish I was one of those birds, chirp, 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 et cetera, et cetera. One thing that is still a mystery to me that was there is a little building called the Mystic Hut, which all I know about it was that there was a secret table that you could press a button and it would flip out and there would be a bunch of candy all over it. And if that's mysticism, I'm resurrecting Rasputin. Sign me up.
Save me, Aleister Crowley.
Yummy mummy. There were ponds and places to sit and everything you can think of when you think of a garden. And if you were in the den of the top floor of their house, you could look over all of this, but you wouldn't be because
come on, Millionaires Row. I mean,
unless you're a gamble, even that's a
one
gamble.
One of the many gamble children, those gamble bastards out there.
22 gambles, and they kept losing. But the Bushes didn't just make this garden for themselves and their greedy little grandkids who want hut candy. They wanted
beyond this realm.
Fourth dimension hut candy. They wanted to share it with the world. So in 1906, the gardens that belonged to Busch opened for free to the public, hence Busch Gardens. Right. They became instantly popular, and soon they were a must-see attraction for anybody that came to visit Los Angeles. They were so popular that Pacific Electric built a new line running straight to the gardens.
You're kidding.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'm not. It was a 14-mile...
Can you check the footnotes and see if that's a joke?
Oh yeah, it's a chuckle buster.
It's a little humor line.
The ones that have Groucho noses next to them, those are the jokes. The gardens became part of the Triangle Trolley Trip that went. That's part of our vocal exercises.
The Triangle Trolley Trip.
They went from the gardens to Santa Monica and the oil fields, which a weird combo. Also really far.
This is how we made all of our money.
Beer, ocean,
I bought
oil.
the ocean, oil.
One visitor was President Taft.
That fat bozo?
Well, yeah, he said, "I would like to play golf here and sit down under those beautiful trees when I get tired." Unfortunately, he accidentally sat in a bathtub under one of those trees and he was stuck for a week.
That's not funny. That's rude. That's problematic.
This is a controversial episode. In summer 1909, they added a new section to the park to accommodate all these visitors. They also had events like the annual Easter egg hunt for orphans, complete with chickens running around dyed the same color as the eggs.
No.
Yeah, it's fun.
No,
it's fun. Just plug the chicken's nose and dunk him in the dye tank. That's how you get different colored eggs.
Yeah, duh.
That's how you get chocolate milk, a brown cow. Now a purple chicken that has little Easter eggs and chicks written on it. That's, I don't know how Easter works. I've done it twice.
Something about dying chickens. I don't know.
Dying chickens and born saints. I don't know. The gardens were also used to film a lot of movies over the years, such as they've got a great resume: The Adventures of Robin Hood,
got it.
Gone with the Wind,
okay,
Citizen Kane,
yes,
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Frankenstein were all filmed
really
there. Yeah, the old mill, they destroyed it to make Frankenstein. Adolphus and Lily ran the garden together until he cracked open an ice cold coffin and died on October.
Oh my God.
Is this why people write in? Is this controversial?
I'm like,
if I made a boo-boo?
Bead of sweat came down my head. Don't say it. It's coming. Don't say it.
It's a nice cold one. So he died on October 10th, 1913, but she kept it going and expanded the hours to 7 days a week. But her life slowly started falling apart after he died, and so did the world. The Busch kids were American, but they married German nationalists. Well, German nationals. I don't know if they're nationalists. I mean, there's good people on both sides. They married Germans, and shortly after Adolphus died, Lily was visiting them in Germany when Europe came down with a case of World War I. So she was stuck in Europe until the end of the war in 1918. So she was stuck there for like 4 years. Then when she finally could come home, she found that the U.S. government had seized the gardens and her estate as an anti-German measure, even though she was a U.S. citizen.
That was why they had the whatever war that was.
That's why they had to do it again.
Yeah, so they can get that property.
World War II, the Battle of Busch. Eventually it got cleared up and she was able to return to her land, but it was only a couple more years until then Prohibition hit. And if your money is being made off of an alcoholic beer company, not good.
Maybe you should have saved up a little bit.
Maybe you shouldn't have gone spending your money in Germany. In 1915, 1.5 million people had visited the park, but it was costing $50,000 a year to maintain it. They started charging charging admission when the war started, but Lily, being so generous that she was known as Lady Bountiful, they used all that money that they made to give to injured veterans from the war. So then, of course, take her money.
Yeah.
It was just bleeding money, so they had to sell off part of the estate, but the rest was kept open by allowing it to be run by the Pasadena Hospital Association in 1920. Then from 1921 to 28, it was taken over by the American Legion of California, who started charging 25 cents admission, 10 cents for children. But in 1928, Lily followed Adolphus up to that big hopper in the sky, and the park now, she's died, and the park kept bouncing around.
I thought she took a very high plane ride. That's all.
She got a moon bounce. The park now kept bouncing around to different owners.
Okay.
This is one of many lists of successions of
I feel like you're laying the framework for how every one of these stories is going to be. Something was great. It cost a lot of money. They sold it a lot, and then it just died.
This is the template. This is my Odyssey, and that all other epic stories will be modeled after. First came the Unemployment Relief Group in 1933, then back to the American Legion in 35. They used it around this time for the Pasadena Flower Show and for a few dog shows, but in 1937 it closed to the public for good. They offered to give the gardens to the city of Pasadena, but it would have been so expensive to maintain. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. The land just got sold off piece by piece to developers. Some of what was in the gardens is still around there. I think the old mill is just in someone's backyard now.
That's weird. It's just full of like golf clubs and skiing equipment and just like a bunch of toys that kids don't want to play with anymore.
And there's just a button in someone's bathroom, and it flips out to have a bunch of treats from the Mystic Hut, and the government keeps trying to seize it from them. But this isn't the end of Busch Gardens, or even the Busch Gardens you're thinking of. There was another.
No.
In 1954, Anheuser-Busch, whatever, they built a brewery in the excessively sunny Van Nuys at 15800 Roscoe Boulevard.
Right off the 405.
The place that smells like beer or French fries or dog food, depending on who you ask and what kind of dog food you buy. Do you like the smell when you pass by?
I didn't when I first started passing by, but it became so familiar that like I don't know what it smells like. And it's not particularly good, but it reminds me of something, and I liked it.
Sometimes it smells better. Like sometimes it smells like good French fries from a fast food place.
Yeah,
can smell
like a charboiled place that like some dude is named after some guy's first name. Sometimes it smells like a burlap sack.
Yeah, it's got weird smells depending on the day. So
it looks super spooky. Not like Victorian era. It looks like industrial.
Yeah, it looks like a slaughterhouse.
Yeah,
it smells like one too, and you smell like one too. But eventually they wanted to build a West Coast counterpart to their Tampa-based Busch Gardens, which in itself was a pumped-up version of the original West Coast one. So in 1964 they opened up a Busch Gardens of their own right next door to the factory at 16,000 Roscoe Boulevard on 17 acres of what used to be a cabbage patch. Admission at first was 25 cents to park and 50 cents to get in, but once you were in, boy, you were in. Unless you stepped out, then no readmission.
Yeah, that's another 50 cents.
And then 25 cents again because we don't like your face. Inside the park, you began your visit on a suspended trolley that took you on a tour of the brewery on both the inside and the outside. This is going to be
like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, welcome to Busch Gardens. What do they got in here? King Kong? No, we have beer.
We have a lot of beer. We have like the most beer we've ever seen.
Life finds a glass. My favorite part of this episode is going to be the Jurassic Park references, describing what's in the parks. They took you on this tour. You saw the brewery inside and outside to take you in. Then once you got off that thing, you were free to roam the park, which, much like the one in Pasadena, it was just a really nice park. There were lagoons and waterfalls and a tropical cruise boat ride. There was live entertainment from humans and also from animals in the form of a penguin and otter exhibit.
No.
Yeah.
A little penguin?
Yeah.
A little Chili Willy?
Where else could a penguin live but Van Nuys? But the park was best known for two things. The first was the exotic birds. They were a huge focus of the park, and there were over 2,000 of them from all over the world. Even more exotic were their ever-present cloaca droppings. But
I bet you loved writing that.
I did.
It's an animal joke. You're good
I'm
at
putting
them.
my degree to use. It's an animal joke and a joke about poop.
What's what I do?
It's what I do. Degree. But in true San Fernando Valley fashion, the thing most people remember it for was the free beer.
Yeah.
With every admission of people of drinking age, I assume.
I hope.
I don't know. So when you got in, you were entitled to 2 10-ounce glasses of beer at each of the 5 different drinking pavilions in the park, all of it for free. So that's a total of 10 glasses of beer you could be drinking.
For 50 cents.
50 cents if you didn't bring a car to the park, which I pray to God was the case for most people, but knowing what I know about the 60s from Mad Men, I'm going to say no. The names of the beer pavilions I could find were the Budweiser Pavilion, the Busch Bavarian Pavilion, and the Michelob Terrace. The other 2 names I can only assume were the Malt Liquor Lounge and the DUI Gazebo.
Sober up!
The Sober Up Sauna. They expanded the park by 5 acres in 1972, and they upped admission prices to $1.75. The new area and some more additions in 1975 feature things like bumper cars, speed bores. That's not right.
Bumper cars is a really odd thing to have in a place where you get drunk and then you drive home.
It's the safest way.
He thinks he's going to open the door to his house right now.
They had a little guy in a police car giving out tickets to everybody.
Mitch, put the car in the garage. I don't want anyone driving by and seeing what I did. That poor kid.
Poor penguin.
Poor penguin, Mitch. Close the garage door, Mitch.
So I wrote speed bores, but it's not speed bores. It's speed boats. Speed balls, too. There was also a walk-through haunted house, which also sounds horrible if you've been drinking. There was the Yahoo Flume ride, which had logs that looked like wooden beer kegs that you sat in them.
That's pretty cool.
And a monorail connecting these two parts of the park. Surprisingly, 100 ounces of beer in a flume ride wasn't a good mix. And by December 1976, attendance had dropped so much that the amusement part of the park was closed. And on January 5th, 1977, the focus was shifted back on the birds, and it was renamed the Busch Bird Sanctuary.
Oh, that's a hard sell.
Yeah.
You like beer and also birds?
But you didn't get, I don't know if there was still beer even.
The motto should have been Budweiser. It's for the birds.
Budweiser. It's German for birds. A visit here to the bird sanctuary. It still started with a 15-minute trolley tour of the factory, narrated by Ed McMahon, but now
how appropriate.
He did it for the free beer. But now afterwards, instead of being let loose to scream for beer at underpaid teenagers, you were just surrounded by birds.
It's so disorienting.
They were just wandering loose in the park. You could take the boat tour to see more birds. Injured ones lived on an island in the middle of the lake.
They were fed beer to feel better.
This is the world the movie The Birds, I feel, was leading to. This is what it would have been.
Prequel?
Yeah, Planet of the Birds. But in 1979, the company decided a bigger brewery would be a better financial decision than saving a bunch of endangered birds. So the sanctuary was closed, the park was paved over, the brewery got bigger, and that's now what's off the 405. Okay. The only remaining Busch Gardens are now in Tampa and Williamsburg. As for this one, you can apparently still see the elevated trolley tracks on the outside of the building if you're on Roscoe. And part of the monorail track is still being used to move beer into the packing room. There's a bridge that goes over the railroad tracks there you can't climb up it. It's just like wall and then bridge on top. Yeah. So it's a bridge to and from nowhere. That's the track of what would take you between the two parts of the park. Wow, okay. So that's still standing just because it's like...
Because it'll be a half-hour job and nobody wants to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're all drunk. As for the birds, most of them were sent either to the LA Zoo or to the Tampa Busch Gardens, but some people say that those exotic birds that you sometimes see around the city are actually descendants of those birds that had escaped from the park. But there really weren't as many birds as there were when the park closed because a disease had spread through Southern California at the time, and a lot of the birds were killed by it. Listen to the name. Newcastle disease. Biomarketing warfare at its best.
It was a British flu that passed by, and all the birds seemed to like it, and sometimes they would just get mad at other birds.
This was the real World War II. Britain versus German.
It's some sort of bird blitzkrieg.